Another one? Should we? Okay, I'm just going to put another one. So do you want to start or?
Yes, I think Methmini has, we have a small slide that we also would like to share. And then we can. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ambassadors, executives, advisors, and special guests, and welcome to the second lecture of the Digital University of the G17 University Ambassadors Consortium for the year 2022. I'm Menasha from G17 Sri Lanka, and I will be your host for this evening. And we are beyond excited to have our global fraternity of change makers here with us to embark on this knowledge-driven journey. To give you a little bit of an introduction to G17, G17 University Ambassadors Consortium is a global undergraduate platform initiated by the Road to Rights organization with its ultimate vision to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development within the university community with over 2,000 ambassadors to date. We have ambassadors joining from 16 different countries, and G17 is dedicated towards empowering university undergraduates on sustainable development goals to become the next generation of young professionals and to make the SDGs a reality through the 4 pillars: capacity building, leadership, policy advocacy, and action. And now I would like to give you a small rundown of today's session. So we will be dedicating a large portion of the event, as usual, to our special guests. They will be speaking on the topic of civil societies and sustainable development. And it is my absolute privilege to welcome Ms. Gail Mowgli and Mr. Mark Nabong from Connected to this event. And I would like to introduce these two esteemed individuals to all of you here today. Ms. Gail Mowgli is the founder and CEO of Connected, the International Solidarity Network. She is a United Nations spokesperson for the World Food Programme, the World Meteorological Association, and the International Organization on Migration. Gail has also worked for UNICEF and various other NGOs across 5 continents, including during emergency situations. Ms. Mowgli has over 20 years of experience as a journalist and communication expert in humanitarian and development sectors, and she is today among the top SDG influencers around the world. Since 2018, she has devoted most of her life to Connected to meet the international cooperation needs that she has identified in the field. And our second speaker, Mr. Mark Nabong. Mr. Mark is an attorney and works in renewable energy development and infrastructure consulting. He serves in Connected as a chief legal officer and board member. He has also worked for multiple MNCs such as Tesla, NRDC, and the Smithsonian Institute. He also holds degrees from the University of Chicago, the University of Georgetown, and is currently at Harvard University. He also belongs to prestigious institutions such as Sigma Psi, AAS, and the Order of Malta. And on behalf of G17 University Ambassadors Consortium, I would like to invite Ms. Mowgli and Mr. Nabong to begin the session. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Do we stop the screen share? Yes, perfect. This is a pleasure for me to be here today, especially after Patrick Paul Walsh, who spoke last time. Patrick Paul Walsh is actually one of our ambassadors. Last year, Connected held the first World Summit of SDG influencers. And Patrick Paul Walsh was one of the SDG influencers that spoke. And we had a huge audience of, we had a reach of over 3 million individuals. So let me tell you a little bit about my background. Thank you very much, Manisha, for introducing me. As she said, I used to work as a journalist, I worked for the UN for many, many years. I was one of the spokesperson for the World Food Programme and other organizations, not anymore. And recently I created Connected, the International Solidarity Network. So I've been privileged to work for a number of civil society organizations. I founded myself a civil society organization, an NGO, and I truly believe in the power of civil society. So before we actually start defining the terms, and Mark is gonna give you a definition, I would like to ask you one question, and then we'll get back to this at the end. Just to think, to you, what is your favorite non-governmental organization? What is your favorite nonprofit? If on the chat you could type the name of a nonprofit that you can relate to, and then we'll get back to it at the end of the session. So Mark, if you can please define what civil society is, what is an NGO, what is the difference with a UN organization?
Of course, thanks, Gail. So the first is there's a lot of different ideas about what constitutes an NGO. So I'm going to summarize it in a few ways. Before I start, I want to say, if you have any questions, right? There's a lot of people here. There's 115 people here. But if you have any questions, please feel free to type them out. We'll either get to them during the talk or afterwards. And it's important to ask the questions. And this relates to what the NGOs and civil service organizations are doing, which is to ask the questions and to interrupt the thought process, the discursive process for the folks who nominally hold the chair, right? The governments and businesses that we presume run the world. So the first is the term NGO is very broad. It means non-governmental organizations. For many of us, the idea of a non-governmental organization brings to mind one or two, which is fine. But I think it's important to remember that there are a large number of non-governmental organizations. There are 116 people in this chat. If I asked you, what do you think of NGOs? Your answer will largely be colored by the NGOs that you have had experience with, right? But because NGO is so broad, it is important, I think, for everyone to remember here that it is simply a descriptive term for every organization that is not a for-profit company or a governmentally created and managed organization, right? It could be something as big as the International Committee of the Red Cross and Red Crescent. It could be something as small as you and I meeting every Saturday for coffee and naming ourselves the Saturday Coffee Club, right? There's a wide variety, and there's a wide variety of political approaches. Civil society is a term for society outside of the for-profit or the governmental world. In a large part, the NGOs are only a portion of that civil society. That is, they are the portion of civil society that is organized and is able to make claims, provide information, or simply coordinate action outside of governmental and business-related systems. So when we talk about NGOs, there is an idea that they mean one thing, but it's important to remember that if we're making a Venn diagram, the NGOs you're thinking of are a small circle. NGOs in particular are larger, and then civil society itself is bigger than NGOs. In most definitions of civil society, your family is a part of civil society because it is outside of the purview of government and business, hopefully, right? Depending on where we live and what we're dealing with. So the first is that what we're talking about NGOs is a specific type of system. I'm going to pass back. Gail, did you have anything to say before I launch into my next spiel?
Yeah, I wanted to say that the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals that you've learned about before, are a perfect communication and program management tools for civil society. Before we used to talk about the SDGs, the sustainable, the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals. And then in 2015, we switched, and now we talk about the SDGs. So there is this whole concept of sustainability, which is really, really great. So it took a few years for the NGOs, all organizations to really adopt this the SDGs and to put them inside their programs, to start communicating about sustainable development, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But I must say that as a communication professional, it is a real step forward because now we all have a common language. Look at the way the SDGs are. You're all familiar with these wheels, with the different colors. They're so simple, no poverty, zero hunger, education for all. In terms of communication, they are to the point. Goals that every single one of us can adopt, and so us as humanitarian professionals, it really helps also in our communication to identify each other. Like, for example, we are extremely active on social media. Well, there's an easy way to sort of recognize each other is to use the hashtag SDGs, hashtag SDGs or hashtag global goals. And that way you can easily search all the different posts from the different organizations about the same, to communicate about sustainable development. I wanted to share with you also a personal story, because what I would like to leave you at the end of this training, if there's just one thing, it's for you to realize how important the role of civil society organizations is. Because if you look, for example, at the UN organizations, the role of the UN is necessary because it has a lot of coordination. It works with the governments, but they actually use the civil society, and we call them implementing agencies, to actually do the humanitarian work on the ground, to send the doctors, to send the teachers, so the role of civil societies and all those NGOs are absolutely necessary. And so when I was living in Nepal, because I've been spending my entire life traveling and working mostly for UNICEF at this time, doing field missions, I remember being in the streets of Kathmandu and seeing all those I'm sure you've seen plenty, those children begging in the streets. And with all my humanitarian colleagues, I remember having those big conversations and I believe that it is our role to pass it on to you. Why shouldn't we give to street children? It may sound horrible to say it to like this, because you see a child that is begging, that is asking you for money, and of course you want to give. It's just a small child. But what I would like to pass on to you is that instead of giving to the kids in the street, give to an NGO. Give to an NGO that will then help those street children. Because in the end, if there are so many street children, it's mostly because people give. And there are many. I'm not saying that it's everywhere the case. There are some places where there may not be any NGO, but there are so many non-profit organizations that come and try to get those kids out of the streets. Come with us. We'll give you an education. We'll give you some food. But if there are some tourists who are giving money, well, and it's so the kids, prefer to stay and beg, and the parents ask them to go begging. And so it's like a vicious circle. And so when I was younger, when I was your age, every time I would go abroad, I would make sure to visit an orphanage, to visit an association or an organization, and to help them. Whether it was to share some of the little money that I had at the time, I would give them money directly, because the nonprofits know what they're doing. They give equally to their beneficiaries. They have long-term plans. They work for their projects to be sustainable. So I'll come back afterwards, but actually I'm going to show you what Connected is all about, but this is really the main thing that my organization Connected, the International Solidarity Working is working on, is to try to encourage people to trust NGOs. We want people to regain trust in what organizations are doing. And I wanted to talk to you about a little bit about the situation of the nonprofit organizations those days, especially after COVID. So COVID was a very difficult situation for many NGOs around the world, and the needs are huge. The impact of COVID, the impact of the economic crisis on the local population is enormous. So the needs grew, and the funds for the NGOs shrinked. If we looked at, I went online and looked at some surveys, and I found that 90% of the nonprofit organizations surveyed had some negative impact from COVID, whether it was on service deliveries, on their finances, on their staff. 60% saw a loss of income, and a third said that they experienced a shortage of volunteers. So we live in a difficult time for civil society. It's not easy. If you think of all the lockdown, many of them did not do their annual galas, which is very often where they get all the money to then run their programs and deliver the services to the beneficiaries. And what I found out all throughout my career in the field is that a nonprofit that doesn't know how to communicate and a nonprofit that doesn't know how to raise funds dies. And this, no matter how necessary their work is on the ground and how useful, how, if they don't know how to communicate themselves and how to raise some funds, they can't continue their work. And so identifying those needs from the foundations, from the nonprofit organizations, and matching them with our skills, which is mostly about communication, partnership buildings, fundraising, and in brief, connecting people to international aid, we connected the International Solidarity Network. So I'd like to invite you, and I'm going to share my screen. I will show you two platforms. The first one is actually the social network that we created. So all of you are invited to join connected.network. And I'm actually, we're discussing with Shan to work together on this platform. So this is a social network that is entirely dedicated to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So I just posted this. This is a social network like any other social network. You may know Adam Rogers, who spoke to you last year. He's actually our vice president. So it's actually a place where anyone can share about sustainable development matters. So you can easily create a post and you can add photos. It's just like any other social media, but you can expand it to an article. And then we have lots of events. And I'll speak to you about this event at the end because you're invited to join as well. And we have communities as well, and that could be interesting for you guys. We have a job board and volunteering place. So it's like a space inside our social network where everybody can share volunteering opportunities, job opportunities. And so we really try to, our goal is to make international solidarity become a norm. And I'm going to stop my screen. I don't know. Can you see, Mark, can you see connected the International Solidarity Network here or not?
Yeah, you can see it.
Perfect. So I changed the first one that I showed you was connected.network. Connected.com is our main website. So some of you attended at the beginning, but those who were late didn't manage to see this video, but this is, it explains what our social network is all about. We have our platform, a list of NGOs, nonprofit organizations working all around the world. And you can choose, so it's find your cause, because all of us really have a cause. I think, some of you might be more interested in climate action or others into poverty reduction. And what we believe is that anyone can change from one cause to another. Like you can really be passionate about climate action and then change to another goal. And so here you can choose your goal out of the 17 goals. You can choose your country, and then you have a list of a whole bunch of organizations and what they do. So for example, I'm going to show you the Center for Railway Children, which we actually visited over the summer. And so we explain what it is, and we show videos. We went on the ground to actually film them, write stories about them, and so it's a way to show people, what those organizations are doing. And if anyone wants to donate, the donations go directly to the NGOs. We don't take any commission whatsoever. I just want to show you our impact. One last video before Mark starts. This is what we did over the summer with our humanitarian mission. And I think I'm just going to let you watch. There you go. I thought it was important for you to see videos from the ground, because when we talk about the civil society, the sustainable development goals, we have to remember that there are some people that are really benefiting from the work of nonprofit organizations, and so I will come back at the end after Mark has given you a little course about so my expertise is more communication. His expertise is more about legal advice. So Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me start by saying I'm only licensed in the United States. Do not take anything I say as legal advice. I don't want to be disbarred by trying to giving advice outside of the US. Thanks, Gail. Let me ask this. You guys have already been through Patrick Paul Walsh's course, right? I think we're all aware of what the Sustainable Development Goals are, right? And why they're important for the well-being of the world, for yourselves, and for any children you have support or have yourself down the road, right, for the future generations. So the question I got for you is take a minute, take like half a minute, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. Think about why you're in these courses and what you want to do. What do you want to do in 5 years? What is it about your life, your goal set, that makes you want to be here? And where would you like to see yourself in about 30, in about like 5, 10 years, right? You don't have to write it out. You can if you want, but I want you to just hold it for 1 second. Do you see yourself as a professor? Do you see yourself as a doctor? Do you see yourself as an aid worker, as a teacher, as an engineer? Think about where you see yourself. I'm going to ask one more question. This is what I'd like you to write in the Q&A. It's not quite a question, but I'm going to fudge the rules for a second. Well, please write in the Q&A the 1 or 2 things you need next, your 1 or 2 next steps, to reach that goal. Think about the goal that you want, and then think about the 1 or 2 things you need next. You need a degree. Do you need an introduction to the right person? Do you need money to start your NGO or to start your business? Right? Do you need to get out of a bad relationship? Do you need to difficult logistic area? Right? If you live in Tristan da Cunha, which is in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, it'll be very challenging to hit some of your goals. So if you would, please think through like what you need next. And the reason why I'm asking that is this. In a world where governments control a lot of the funding, in a world where companies control a lot of the funding, imagine the barriers it takes to become a part of a government and have impact. You have to join at the bottom level, maybe you have to run for office, maybe you have to be appointed as a civil servant. It takes a while to climb that ladder. Right? I see someone helping folks in need, environmental management company. Think about how challenging it is to become an impact maker, a stakeholder within a government. Now think about how much effort it would take you to become an impact holder in a large company, in a company that affects the world in a significant way, right? It doesn't have to be as large as Meta or Alphabet or that's Facebook and Google, but it can be one of those. That is the reason why I'm asking that is, in many ways, looking at the company level or looking at the government level means you're looking top down. The reason why NGOs are important for SDGs, one of the reasons why NGOs are important for SDGs is they can work from bottom up. Everyone in this classroom right now, all 116, 127 people right now, you can go form an NGO right now. Will you form a successful NGO? That's a different question, right? Depends on how well you study, how you work, and not a little bit of luck. But everyone here can form an NGO right now. Everyone here can associate with one other member of this group to form an NGO right now. And that's why NGOs are important. I'm going to read a quote to you. I'm going to post it in the chat as well. Civil societies have and will always be filling the immense task of bridging the gap to address those issues that couldn't be fulfilled by governments alone. Right? There's a quote on there. I put the link in. By the way, never trust anyone who makes a quote or makes a statement without providing their source. This is from the UN itself. You know that already. You're all students. Think about the needs and issues that can't be addressed by governments alone. That's almost all of them, right? Almost every issue and need, whether it's women's health, whether it's education, there are gaps to be filled, right, that the government cannot meet. Civil society organizations, NGOs, those are a vehicle, maybe the vehicle for those gaps to me, everyone else in this room, right? If you're going to get involved in something, the odds of you joining, a political party and making an impact right now are relatively small. The odds of you, making it into a company, being able to affect that company's policies, they're very small. You can join a company, right? But is anyone going to listen to you about, what your impact is on sustainability or in education or the like? Probably not for a while. But you can make an impact on NGOs right now. Civil service organizations, NGOs are kind of the same thing. There's an article that came out about 20 years ago in the Indian Journal of Political Science that said like it was mostly a rebranding thing. If everyone wants a copy of that, I can give that to you. But the main point is that they're functionally the same thing when we're talking about it here. NGOs are a wide umbrella, and it is important when you're thinking about what the goals that we talked about just 10 minutes ago. Think about like, what's the method that I'm going to get there? So I'm going to answer this question in two ways. Why are NGOs, why is civil service organizations important for sustainable development, right? Which is like, the upper level umbrella. But I'm going to try to answer, why are they important for you, right? Why are they important for your life and your career? So the first is they're important for, and I'm going to bring up a couple of things here. The first is that civil service organizations partner with governments, right? In order to do the things either the government can't do or they won't do, right? I think many of us here, I am from a country that has been colonized. I'm from the Philippines originally, and we moved to the US, a colonizer, I guess, although it's great to be an American. But when we're talking about government aid, when we're talking about international aid, it is really easy to approach it from a colonizing mindset, top down. We, the experts, will tell you what to do. NGOs are a chance. Well-run NGOs with, with the right folks, with the folks with the right education and mindset, can then start listening to the folks on the bottom. Instead of being top down, they could be bottom up. We have an amount of money here. Fund A has $5 million, 5 million euros. Rather than hiring our experts to fly from Brussels or New York, to country X, we're going to hire a local NGO that knows the area, right? That knows the people, that knows the problems that will arise. NGOs are vitally important, primarily ones where their work staff and their workers are coming from the communities they impact, because that's what allows them to do the work that they do in their country. If you think through all the organizations you've experienced in your life, some of them are going to be good, some of them are going to be bad, but I'm going to guess the majority of ones that you've met in your life, that you've experienced, that have been good because they've had local folks in charge or local folks doing the work, right? And that's what Gail was addressing earlier, right? If you come in and you give someone just a bunch of money, maybe that works, maybe that doesn't. But if you come in and you go to a local NGO and say, listen, I'm worried about these street children begging in the streets. What have you found to be effective and how can I support you? That's going to be a huge take. Another reason why NGOs are important is that when governments do it, it comes loaded with strings too. But government money almost always comes with strings attached, right? And they're almost always subject to local political, international political issues. One of the organizations I belong to, the Order of Malta, has a assistance wing, Malteser International. And one of the reasons why that has been important is that it can go to places where governments aren't able to go, right? Médecins Sans Frontières, which I think a few folks have mentioned here under different names, is another amazing example. Partners in Health is another amazing example. These are organizations that can go in places without necessarily the downsides, the red flags that a governmental organization comes in, right? I'm not saying that you should distrust US aid, right? But there's no question there are some governments for whom a US aid funded project is going to be looked at askance and possibly subject to harassment or ineffective work, right? And so it's very, very important that not only are civil society organizations involved, but the right civil society organizations are involved and the right people are involved in those civil society organizations, those NGOs. Out of the 123 people here, I guarantee you that by being on the path you're on, you have a chance to be those right people, right? And you have a chance to affect the world in that fashion. Those are important, for the development, for the sustainability goals. But I also want to talk a little bit about why they're important for you, right? One of the things that I get asked by students all the time is, how can I get involved? What do I need to do, right? How do I get my bones in? One of the most important things and the hardest things to get, particularly if you're not from a privileged background, is experience, right? If from a privileged background, your parents can pay for everything, you can get free and you can get an internship and you don't need income, right, to make it work, right? You have access to, those kinds of things. But if you are not from a privileged background, you're not connected, right? Not connected yet. So you're not connected yet. It's very hard to get those kinds of internships. So the question you should ask yourself is, how can I get connected? How do I get connected? How do I get the kind of experience I need to be able to make an impact? And wherever you are in the world, there's probably an NGO near you that needs volunteers. There's probably an NGO that needs your expertise, right? I'm speaking just from my own personal experience, but the fact that you're in this class means that your English skills, which is the trade language of the world, the commerce language of the world, your English skills are excellent, which means that there is an NGO near you that needs your help, at least to interact with international funding or international organizations, right? Today is the 29th of October. You got a homework assignment for all of you. You may not, I have no ability to enforce it, right? But I need you to write down what you wrote at the beginning, what you want to do. I want you to write down the thing that you said you needed to do next, right? And here's you look up in your local phone book, you go and knock on doors, you find 3 organizations that you can interact with now, 3 organizations that you can interact with now that you can volunteer with, or that need your assistance or need your expertise. Because I promise you that one of them does. And at least one of them will change the trajectory of your life. Not because you need the change of the trajectory, but in a lot of ways, we are flames in search of fuel, right? We're flames in search of wood. You need the wood to be able to affect the world, with your fire. And so by connecting yourselves with these organizations, you are able to start to make the professional connections, start to grow the skill set, and start to, as sad as it sounds, make the case on LinkedIn in your CV that you have experience. It's 2022. If you volunteer tomorrow at one of these organizations, at this time next year, you could go into job interviews and say, I have been working with organization X for a year. I'm serious. I'm legit. I'm for real. And you have that now. If you have any part of you that says, I don't know how I'm going to get started in my career path, this is how you go over that sense of lack of knowing. Because if you join one of these organizations, there are folks there that can mentor you or connect you to a mentor. This is why Gail started ConnectAid and why organizations like ConnectAid are important. Because connecting folks who are not connected, who are not from wealthy families, who are not from powerful organizations, there's a lot of gold out there. Networks, right? Well-run networks can be the way to find that gold. And that gold for you is to find the opportunities. And that gold for the organizations is to find you. And so when we talk about NGOs and civil service organizations, it is very easy to think of them abstractly. Médecins Sans Frontières, that's far away, right? It's not that, first of all, it's probably not that far away, right? There's probably an MSF organization, like outlet in your area, right? But there are a number of organizations, right? And that's why they're important. I'm going to read you another quote that I have here as I click over to my other notes, right? Civil service organizations are, of course I turned it off there at that point, right? A civil society organization, or NGO, is any nonprofit voluntary citizens group which is organized on a local, national, or international level, right? That is a very wide berth, right? And these things serve to support other organizations. I'm going to put United Nations into the chat. This is a place to find out, one, about what some other organizations are doing. Thank you, Menashe, for reminding me about moving over in 15 minutes, right? So I'm putting this in there. And the reason why I'm putting this in there is because there is an opportunity for all of you to get involved, not just at the local level, which you should do, but if you look on that link, on the left-hand side of the bottom is open to all, right? So there's a number of things you can do right now. Civil Society Thursday briefings, UNDPI NGO dialogues, weekly announcements. There's a lot of stuff that you can listen to right now and hear what people are doing right now through the civil society organizations, through the UN, right? And these are primarily in pursuit of the SDGs. And the reason why that's important is two reasons. One, it's important to get the information. Here's what's out there. Here's what's going on, right? Here's what's available. Here's how folks who have done it successfully, or maybe not so successfully, here's how they've worked it, right? But the second reason is, and I'm saying this because as someone who's worked in renewable energy for a while, and just in my own personal experience, the number one thing, there's two things that are going to prevent you from getting to the spot where you want to get to. The first is the robustness of your network. Maybe that's a financial network, like folks who can support you and put you through school, but maybe that's just like a job network or professional network, right? You need to make those connections because your light needs to be in front of the right people, right? I know everyone here is going to shine. We have to make sure you get in front of the right people. But the second part is your own personal ability to interact, right? Your own morale, right? The energy and the verb with which you approach it. Maybe this doesn't apply, to anyone else, right? For me, particularly when I was starting in my career, there was quite a bit of imposter syndrome. There was quite a bit of, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to get from point A to point B. I can't imagine how I'm going to do this. And for me, it was no one in my family has ever worked in this field, right? I don't know how to tell my folks that I want to work in renewable energy. I could tell them I want to be an engineer. I could tell them I want to be a lawyer. I have no idea how to tell my family I want to work in renewable energy. or I need, right, to my family. So your ability to do what you need is going to be predicated on your ability to get yourself re-inspired and to be around the kind of folks that can inspire you and can teach you. And so that's why Connect Date is very, very important. Shameless plug there, but also in a greater sense, why making the connections to other people in this class are going to be very, very, very important. And I'm going to drive that point home with another exercise. I think I have time for this so that Menashe doesn't murder me. I think I have time for one more exercise. Please, if you can, if you would like to, again, this is totally voluntary. Some of you have already posted the kind of problems that you want to work on, right? Please do it again. Please post the kind of problems you want to work on. I'd love to see at least several dozen. I know you, the rule of thumb is that you only get 10% participation in these kind of Zoom chats. I'd love to see a larger selection of folks post what they're interested in. So if you could please write what you're interested in the chat, and I'm going to explain why I'm doing this in a second. Please put that in there. And while I give you a minute to do that, I'll say that civil service organizations don't just work on stuff that is directly tied to development. I think one of the points that I'm sure Patrick Paul Walsh made the other day is that we're talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. Development is a wide brush as well. There are three legs to sustainability. He may have said this in a different way, but it's people, planet, and profits. Meaning that when we talk about sustainability, it's often thought of as planet, right? Environmental issues, global climate change, the acidity of the ocean, biodiversity, and that's really important. It's one of the legs. But the other two legs are people, meaning that it has to be fair for the folks involved, right? It has to be equitable, and it has to be the kind that can be perpetuated, can be sustainable in a community, right? How are you going to get there without an NGO, without a non-governmental organization, without folks that know it on the ground? The last leg of the sustainability triangle is profit, meaning it has to make sense for folks financially. It doesn't have to just be like plutocrat profit. It could be just like, it has to be one where we're not constantly losing money. We're generating wealth. We're generating income for the folks around. Has everyone written what they want to write in the chat? It is entirely possible that I've lost everybody, right? And that no one is listening to a thing I say, which is very common because I have two small children. And I'm fairly certain that they only hear about 10% of the things that I say. I'm going to say it again, though, because I'm persistent. Things that you want to do if you have not already done it. I'm going to read a few of the items that people have already written. Mateus wrote, the solution for the most social, economic, and political problems is the union of private initiative, state, and civil society. Melindu wrote, I see myself working in a sustainable development company, which helps to fulfill my inner thoughts. Dinesh wrote, to upgrade our NGOs to be more accessible to many people and expand to nearby states. Noor wrote, I see myself working in an environmental management company. Swasti wrote, I see myself as someone who could get the best deal out of all for the ones in need. I'm going to say this, and the reason why I want to say this is you may not want to participate now, and that's okay. It's entirely voluntary. But all the folks in this room with you are your network, right? If you know what Mateus wants to do, right, that really helps you help Mateus get a job and help Mateus get you a job down the road if he knows what you want to do. If you know what Swasti or Noor want to do, it really helps you connect to each other. In a Zoom world, we're very isolated from each other. But the hidden truth is that in its own way, a classroom like this is its own NGO. And your ability to get to know each other and to back each other up in 5 months, in a year, is going to be outrageously important. I swear to you that you are going to get a job that you don't think you're qualified for because someone that you connected with, either at work or at school, believed in you. This is going to happen at some point. So I strongly encourage you to get to know each other. Yapon Wai wants to work in the Palace of Justice in Malaysia and working on pro bono cases. So please do connect with each other and make that happen. Menashe, I believe I have 5 minutes left. Is that correct?
Yes, I can take 5 minutes, and then I think Gail also wants to talk a little bit as well, some closing remarks.
Right. So before I pass back,
yeah.
Before I pass back to the big boss, I want to conclude with a couple of other resources for you in terms of NGOs. There is going to be, I want to talk about a couple of things. One is when we're talking about NGOs and civil service organizations, it is very, very common to not know where to start and to see how they interact with each other. It feels like they work on their own, but the truth of the matter is that many larger organizations, governmental and non-governmental, UN or specific sovereign nations, work with NGOs to get done what they need to get done. NGOs receive a number of grants. They receive a number of other information out there, a number of other support from governments, particularly if the governments either don't want to do it, they don't have the capacity to do it, or they don't want to do it because they don't want to get their hands dirty with it, right? And so one example I'm going to post for you right now is the UN Migration Group, and it lists how they work with different organizations, and there's a list of how the UN Migration Group works with NGOs. This is a pretty significant kind of template for how you should think about what kind of work that you want to do. Some of you will work for NGOs, some of you won't work for NGOs. But I think it's important to know that the barriers we put up between government and NGO, between business and government, unfortunately for all of us, fortunately, it's not, those barriers aren't as strong as maybe they should be. But the truth of the matter is that that's also an opportunity. There's a line, I don't speak Japanese, but a line I heard, which may or may not be true, is that the Japanese word for crisis is the same as the Japanese word for opportunity. And so I encourage you to think of that here. I'm going to put one other list up on the wall. Some of these are going to be available to you, but some not. But you'll note there's a lot. This is a list of NGOs that are accredited to the Conference of State Parties. There are other accreditations out there, right? But this is for the Department of Economic and Social Affairs for Disabilities. There are lists like this available for a number of different fields, whether here it's disability rights and service, but we work in environmentalism, we're working in anti-poverty relief, we're working in medical relief. There are lists like this available. Find a list like this and go grab that organization. If you make calls next week, I swear to you, you're going to get at least 1 or 2 volunteer opportunities. And it doesn't have to be 40-hour-a-week volunteer opportunities. If you offer to update their social media once a week, they will be so happy, and it'll take you 30 minutes to an hour every week. And then that'll be your thing from now on. In fact, and again, this was helpful as I pass back to Gail here in 2 minutes. Social media, particularly social media in English, is one place where a lot of NGOs need a lot of help. Right? A lot of them need a lot of help. They need, one, folks who speak English, but 2, folks that are savvy about social media and know how to do it, right? And so if you know how to do it, if you know how to communicate well, you have an in to a large number of work. Gail, that right? Like, I feel like one thing that all these NGOs are missing is like a presence on, like Elon Musk just bought Twitter. I'm going to hold my tongue because I used to work for Tesla and I still hold stock in them. But whether or not you're happy with that, you should make sure to make a presence for yourself and for your NGOs out there in the media space, and not just make space for it, but protect the brand. The NGOs, there's so many NGOs that their branding is going to be very, very important. Their credibility is going to be very important. So I'm gonna end with this. Non-governmental organizations is just another way of saying folks working together on stuff. Just another way of saying it's 2 or more people who decided to do something together. So NGOs aren't necessarily the boogeyman some of us feel they are, because we've dealt with bad NGOs. We've all heard about the International Committee of the Red Cross and Red Crescent that only built 6 homes in Haiti after receiving millions of dollars, right? Mm-hmm. But for every action like that, there are dozens and dozens of actions taken by NGOs, heralded and unheralded, that are changing the world that we live in today. And if you are here, I suspect that everyone here wants to change the world. There's a line, and I'm forgetting who said it, but if you're looking to change the world, you change yourself first. So the first thing you do if you're looking to change the world, get yourself around folks that can teach you what to do. Get yourself around folks that can introduce you to other networks. Change yourself and change your trajectory, and you'll be able to change the world. Thanks, everybody.
So be the change that you want to see in the world by Gandhi. This was so inspiring to read some of what you wrote on the chat, and it's, almost all of you wrote something that is connected to purpose. Wow, what a generation! This is incredible, and so. You guys, so I really invite you guys to join our network. We can help you to connect you to international aid, and I'd like to talk a little bit about communication. Growing a network is something that takes time. So now you do have this time because you're studying. So go be active on social media. Remember the question that I asked at the very beginning. What is your favorite nonprofit organization? Well, I'd like you to do something. I'm not going to ask you to go donate to this organization. I know students don't have this kind of funds, but if today you could go to your favorite organization, like you go on any social media, you find them on Twitter, so LinkedIn, Instagram, and you go look at their posts and you comment, you share. This is so easy. I'm sure all of you have a phone. All of you are spending lots of time on your phone looking at photos at, your friend's food or someone on the beach with a bathing suit. Why don't we use a little bit of this time to do something good and to help those organizations, any organization, to be seen? Because it's by clicking, just a simple click, you will enhance their visibility with the algorithms. So thank you for all of you who said that Connected was their favorite nonprofit. That really touched me. I wanted to invite you next week. We are having a training, it's free, with really high-level individuals. So there will be Adam Rogers, our vice president, but also Carol Endosi, who is very often on the top of our list of SDG influencers. We've got a list of 650 influencers, SDG influencers. Actually, you can join this list on connected.com. You can find where the list is, and you can register on the list. So you might be at the bottom of the list at the beginning or not seen in the list, but slowly, in 3 or 4 years, I want at least 2 of you out of the 113 people left to be on top of this list. And so the event that I'm inviting you to, I'm sharing the link. Yep. Here. Why isn't it working? Check. Okay, never mind. I'll share afterwards to open a list. I'll show the list, the link afterwards. So it's on Friday at 3:30 p.m. Paris time, because Mark here is based in Spain. I'm based near Geneva. So calculate what time it's going to be in your country. I have no idea. So 3:30 p.m. Paris time next Friday. And we'll talk about how to use social media for common good. Giving you lots of little tips, and we hope to really inspire you even more than what you already are. And I can see on the chat that you guys are already into purpose and meaning, and you are the future. You are our chance to actually reach the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and now I guess it is time to respond to some of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gail and Mark, for that incredibly inspiring session. I do want to reiterate what both of you said about social media. So please capture photos of this session as well. Make sure that your reach on social media, use your own personal accounts, and make sure both G17 and Connected, which are both civil societies, both NGOs, we are all non-government associations, get the reach that they deserve, because we are trying our hardest to reach the SDGs through different networks, through different ways, yes, but we are all trying our best to get this done. So as individuals, as undergraduates with a purpose, as Gail said, who have aspirations to change the world, we call ourselves change makers. Let's start small with social media. There's 111 of you here, so use all your social media accounts and post about this session as well, post about Digital University, use your stories, whatever that you feel comfortable with, and make sure to start with social media, because that is the first tool, that is the most important tool that we have, that is free, to make the changes that we want to see. With that being said, we shall move into question and answers. I would like to invite all the ambassadors. You can use the question and answer section in the panel. It's at the bottom of your screen, and send your questions to us, and we will try to answer them. So I will ask, just to inform everyone of the process, I will ask the question generally, and Gail, Mark, you are free to join in whenever that you feel comfortable to join in and answer that question. Thank you very much.
Of course, and before we get started, I'll say Gail had a good idea. If you see on in the chat, Gail, I put up the link to the Connectaid network, and Gail's put up the link to Connectaid's LinkedIn, as well as hers. I'll put mine up in a moment. You should all be connected to each other. Feel free to put your LinkedIn up there as well. So I'm going to post mine in a moment. But Anasha, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mark. So the first question we have is from Islam. What do we have to do as the young generation for the increasing of tolerance in each of our societies, especially as a multicultural state?
I think that's a fantastic question. I think the first is the personal, and the second is the public. The first is the personal, which is not only is it important to say, like, I have no hate in my life for anyone, I don't want to be intolerant to them, you actually have to make personal connections to folks from different groups, right? If you are in a multicultural society, it is really important to get involved in personal relationships, friendship, professional, with folks from other groups. Even if we support multiculturalism, it's very abstract until we form bonds with other folks and really hear what those concerns are. And then you have mutually assisted each other in preventing, any kind of intolerance, at least in your small circle down the road. The second is public. Again, there's going to be safety issues involved here, so it's entirely based off your safety concern, where you're feeling safe. But when you see microaggressions and macroaggressions, intolerant statements, cruel statements, violent statements, it's important to push back, right? If we're going to make it public, the first thing to reclaim the public sphere from the craziest people is to make the public sphere not a comfortable place for those folks to exist. But that's very challenging, particularly if you are in a minority group yourself, or there's risk of harm. So not saying put yourself at risk, but it is important that at least at some level, your personal connections have to be strengthened, and the public space has to be made hostile to intolerance or violent statements. I think. I don't know. I think.
Very quickly, I would just say, be yourself. Be yourself, and communicate about what you truly feel in your heart, and people are touched by emotions. They no one can ever blame you for being you and being all about meaning and purpose. And so yeah.
And just to follow up onto that question, how do we, since we are trying to do the minimum, because, well, we are undergraduates, so there's not a lot that we can do, but how do you think we should measure our reach? And should we measure our reach is a big question I think that we had.
Yes, of course. I mean, on social media, it's very easy to measure your reach. You can see how, where in which countries you've got all the systems that can help you with that. But also, it's not so much about the numbers, because if you have inspired someone else to do something good, just one person, and think about the ripple effect, the snowball effect, so sometimes just encouraging one person to do something good is a success. So
I agree with Gail. I think when you measure it, you shouldn't necessarily look at the numbers, right? Particularly when you're starting out. It's ridiculous if you are starting to run a race and concern yourself about your times. Again, you have to care about your times a little bit, but the more important thing is to get your health right, get your cardiovascular strength up if you're starting to join the track team or the race team. And here, rather than measure yourself by your number of connections, measure yourself about the depth of your connections. Talk to people, make sure they know your dreams and your hopes and concerns and know theirs. I think probably the best way to make those connections and to measure it is this: you should listen about twice as much as you speak, and that is the way that you start to make those connections. Now, this is ironic coming from me right now because I don't shut up, but really the amount that you hear from other people is going to be important, and that's how you measure your connections. A loose connection, where you're connected on social media, but you have no idea who they are, doesn't mean much. But a connection where you hear someone say, I'm looking for someone who knows food issues in South Asia, is you're able to say, oh, I know two folks that are working in that. I'll connect your two. To me, I think that's the better connection, is the depth of the connections as opposed to number of them. So I agree with Gail.
Here, Maria is asking, how do we reach other social classes? That's a good question, especially those who don't have access to a phone and all the communication tools. Again, it all comes to communication, but, just being there, showing the example, giving. At Connected, we call ourselves the community of givers. During the past 5 years, that's all we've done: giving, helping nonprofits, connecting people, organizing trainings. And so I remember when I was traveling before COVID, going, for example, in little villages, like trekking and anywhere, and just going, sit down and talk to the kids. And often I would be invited to inside the schools and I would do like a half an hour class in English. Now, why don't you talk also in your mother language with, because you guys are all ambassadors of the Sustainable Development Goals. So why don't you talk with your own words to inspire others to also do something with meaning and purpose? And maybe there are some people who will speak to you and will, they thought, okay, well, my goal in life is to make as much money as possible, no matter how I do it, but that's what I want. Maybe you will inspire them to do something that has more purpose in this planet.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that being able to inspire folks is a big part about that. And I think embedded in what Gail is saying is this: you can't just reach out to people and see them as a commodity, right? If you are providing services to folks in a more challenging economic position, you still have to treat them like persons with their own autonomy and with their own ability to make decisions for their own lives, right? I think what is important for the way Gail approached it before was she wasn't saying, like, I'm only going to give you kids this money if you do X, Y, and Z with it, right? She's saying, like, you have to respect the autonomy that people have. And so you donate to an SDG so that you still respect their autonomy by not putting conditions on the money that you give. So when you're working with folks that are at a social class, and again, I don't like the idea of class, but it's a good descriptive. If you're working with folks that are in a more challenging situation or experiencing greater poverty or greater instability than you are, you still have to respect their autonomy and their desires. People are human beings; they can make their own decisions. If you're going to speak to folks with more funds, right? I don't know if this is where Maria is going with this, but if you're like, how do I talk to folks with deep pockets so we can talk about our SDG and make some, and get some cash? I think the most important thing is, again, don't see them as just a cash cow, right? If anyone here has ever talked to folks with lots of money or folks with lots of power, and if you listen to the people that talk to them over the course of the day, 98% of it is asking for stuff. Please connect me to someone. Please, make this call. Please pull this string. If you want to work with folks that have more means, whether that's economic or power, the first thing to do is to go to where they are, right? That means, number one, get an education, because folks with power, they put their kids in school, right? They put themselves in school. The most important thing you can do is to do right by your own education, because if you're going to speak to someone, you need to be able to speak the language, and you need to show that you're serious about improving either your station in life or the well-being of your SDG. Second, when you get there, again, listen twice as much as you speak. React to what they're looking for, as opposed to telling them what you want. Whether it's someone with more money than you or less money than you, they're individuals. They're the main character in all their stories. We're all side characters for everyone's story. So you have to learn how to talk to them for what their concerns are as the main character of their story. That applies to folks with lots of money, that applies to folks with no money. I hope that answered that question, Maria.
Yes, I think it speaks to the fundamental need to talk and build relationships with people, and whatever you do, you have to make sure that you treat everyone as equals and make sure that they understand where you come from, and to understand where they are coming from as well. I think Marina's question was definitely answered with both of your perspectives. So we have one question. There's a lot of questions coming up. It is highly important for civil societies to hold governments to account on their commitments. How can we do that as civil society, pushing for new laws, programs, policies, strategies on climate change and other critical areas?
I think that question is something, if anyone here has heard of a theory of change, right? I think that question requires you to do a theory of change exercise. If anyone has worked in any kind of action or lobbying work, the theory of change is the exercise by which you ask, who do we need to affect? How do we affect them? And what change do we want to affect under what timeline, right? So there's no one-stop shop answer to that question. The best one-stop shop answer is you have to sit down and ask who the relevant stakeholders are, who the relevant mechanisms of power are. Are you in a democracy? Are you not in a democracy, right? Who are you in a top-down economically planned model, or are you one where you can start a social business, a la Grameen Bank and Mohammed Yunus? It depends entirely on the question you're asking, and so I'm going to post here a link to creating a theory of change. By the way, this theory of change model is one that, for better or for worse, a lot of folks who work in the development space or in the impact space, they end up needing. They end up talking through this kind of model. So I'm going to put this up there, but there's a lot more literature available for it. So you'll see this in a second when my computer stops with the spinning beach ball that it's given me.
I see a question. What can you suggest to the civil society to further improve their services? I think my biggest advice would be to not work in silo, really to work with other partners, and I've seen this so often that, organizations always trying to reinvent the wheels, doing their own things. I think we are so much better when we work together. So increasing the partnerships, looking at, and really stop seeing other organizations as competition, but as potential partners, to always look at the goal, the impact, the positive impact on the beneficiaries or on the environment, instead of just our own nonprofits. And I think this is really what we want to do with Connected, is to break silos and encourage solidarity to become an international norm. And let me tell you, this is not easy, because we are in a world where, you know, it's all what's in it for me, and it's hard to fight against that, to look at the collective good instead of the personal gains.
I agree. Like, and that's part of like getting out of that silo is really challenging. In fact, Gail, you inspired me. Here's one more bit of homework. I'm going to alter my homework. There's about 5 or 6, maybe 7 people who posted in LinkedIn's in the chat. Connect to at least one other person in class you haven't connected to before, and send them a message about what you hope to do and ask them what they hope to do, right? Maybe you'll do it, maybe you won't, but find a reason to connect to people, because Gail's right. Breaking those silos and making it non-competitive. These aren't your competitors. These are your resources down the road, and you're theirs. And so I think that'll be pretty key.
So we have, I'm really sorry that I would really like to stay in that conversation, but there are so many questions coming up, so we have to move on. One question from Madan Thapa. As a newly registered youth-led NGO, how can we affiliate and badge funds?
How can we find funding? That's the question. This is really difficult, and it's and as I said, it's even more difficult now than it used to be. And so one of the things that we are trying to do at Connected, and that's our plan for the coming month, is to work as much as possible with foundations, to invite them to come to our network and do, you know, an event where the foundation presents, okay, this year we're giving 1 million euros for this is how you can apply, and, you know, to start creating a relationship between the people and those foundations. Now, I have to tell you, there are way more people asking for funds than people actually donating, or you know, I mean, we're talking about big donations, like from grants, because that's really how. But there are lots of websites and there are lots of grants out there. You need to find the one that fits you, and then you need to apply again and again. So it's not easy, but
it's not. And I'll peel back a little bit of the layers too. I think it sounds like we're a broken record here, but I swear that this is true. You're going to hear about grants from other people. I mean, there are grants out there. This is crazy because there's tons of people that want money, right? There's not enough grants out there for the kind of people, number of people that want money. But there are some grants out there that like they can't get anyone to apply for, right? Because they're like so narrowly focused, right? Like we're here and we need, you know, we want to donate money to an educational organization in Tamil Nadu that helps 18 to 19-year-olds. Like that's, how many organizations fit that bill, right? How many organizations can argue that they fit that bill? Maybe not as many as you would think. So one of the things you have to go out there is get out there and start looking and talking to people about it, because you're gonna hear someone say, you know, there's this grant out there that you can apply for that they don't have enough folks for. And so I think that's, you know, money is one of the toughest things to find, right? Every single person here, including all of us that are running both the class and Connected, we could always use more money for our organization. Mm-hmm. So it's not an easy answer. And given the fact that you're presumably much younger than me, I'm 43, you're going to have access to a lot more technological and conceptual sources of funding than I can imagine right now. So at some point, I'm going to ask you, you know, where can I go to get funding?
Yeah.
I do think a lot of us are concerned about money, because the next question is on how civil society stakeholders report their contribution to the agenda of 2030 and the eventual achievement of the SDGs.
I think that requires, and same for the question before, how can we measure our impact? That would require a whole class on what it's called monitoring and evaluation and reporting. Maybe you guys, maybe the Mark can, if you want to add something, but I don't think we can really respond in very brief answer. Mark.
Yeah, because it depends on who you're responding to. Like, did you receive a government grant? It's going to impact how you report. Did you receive a private grant? There's no general response except two. You report the way the people who are giving you money need you to report. That's one. But two, you also report internally in a way that allows you to measure yourselves in that fashion, because you might change funders down the road. You don't want to have to change the data you collect. So you want to make sure to have robust data collection so that when you report out, it can adhere to different standards, right? You may end up with multiple sources of funding, which I hope you do. But I think that's one way to do it. There's not an easy way.
What I can add is also to not forget, again, I'm coming back to communication, but even if you're not reporting directly to the people who gave you a grant or something, but remember that anyone can see your posts on social media. So communicate as much as possible. If, like, when you have your nonprofit or you're working on a project during the summer, lately we've been using more and more videos. I showed you two of the videos that we did over the summer. Videos are a great way to show your impact, because people can really relate to what they see. Impact stories, because we just had a training a couple months ago on to explain that donors nowadays are extremely skeptical, and you can't just tell them, oh, we're extremely good, we're doing an amazing impact. No, it's not enough. You actually have to show the impact, to show, and stories, emotions are the best way, because you touch people's heart. In the end, whether it's the director of a big foundation or a student, you guys are humans, and connect with your hearts. Be yourself when you communicate, because you don't have to only use your organization social media. You can also use yours, talk with your words, and videos are really a great way to show what's happening on the ground.
Thank you.
I'm putting a link up. I'm not vouching for this course because I've not taken it, but there is a Coursera course on impact reporting for SDGs, impact measurement and management for SDGs. There's a bunch of them out there as well. There's one from Oxford Said School of Business. That's like 7,500 pounds. So I don't know what SDGs got 15 grand American dollars lying around, but there's a couple of them out there.
Yes, and I think I'm sure there are also free resources available on YouTube if you can find them. So we are in the digital age, of course. So I encourage everyone to use all the available resources that we have. I think we have enough time for about 2 more questions. So the next question is, in terms of what are the ways that we can use to increase trust of the society in NGOs? I know personally in Sri Lanka, this is a problem that we have, because we have a generation that is skeptical of NGOs because of political narratives mostly. I know this is the same for a lot of the third world countries. So what would you suggest in terms of gaining trust for NGOs?
I think that's exactly what I was saying before, like to always remember that donors or that people are skeptical, and so I answered that videos were a great way, stories, but also to me, I've seen that every time someone goes to the field and see with their own eyes what's happening, they become ambassadors for life for this project. So that's why we're organizing those solidarity trips, and that's something that we want to develop, where we can bring some people, maybe from corporations, to actually come and spend a week with the NGO and help. I think the best help that they can do is also help communicate to, because then they communicate back home, and people are thinking, hey, that could be me there. They relate to that person that goes to the ground, and so sometimes, yeah, being open to inviting others to come and see, that's a great way to avoid this skepticism.
I agree with it. I co-sign everything Gail said, and I'll add something else too, which is that one, to reiterate what we said before, you should listen twice as much as you speak. Don't roll into a location, tell them what you're going to do for them, right? It's always way more effective to ask, what do you need? And then say, I can do X and Y that might help you with A and B of what you're talking about. If I walk up to you and I say, here's your potato, right? You're like, I don't want this potato. Right? But if I walk up to you and say, like, are you hungry? What do you like? If you say fries, I'm like, give me a minute, we can make some fries, right? Like it's very different to tell people what they're going to get and asked what they're going to get. That's the first thing. The second is when you interact with folks, in my opinion, it's this. It's that if you want to build trust, you have to fulfill small promises first, and then they'll believe you on your big promises. If you say, I would like your help, then email them back right away. If they're expecting an email back right away, you email them back right away. If they're expecting a call back, expect a call back. If they're expecting you to connect to someone else in your network, you do it right away. It's small bursts of credibility that will build someone's trust for you. Way too often, we ask someone for a big thing and say, trust me, or they ask us for a big thing and say, trust me. It's much better to say, what can I do for you? What small thing can my organization do for you and your community? And just keep it at that. You'll find that after 3 small promises filled, you're going to get a bigger request, right? That's the way it always is. Fulfill those small promises and fulfill them to yourself as well. This is not an insignificant thing. If you want credibility, you have to maintain your internal credibility. The people who work for you, your volunteers, your staff, they have to know that you're a man or a woman of your word, because that will radiate out from the organization. If you set the tone for the folks that work with you, around you, even above you, right? If you have a boss, you have to be able to fulfill those small bits of credibility because it will radiate out from what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I think we have gone a little bit over time. I think this was one of the most intense online sessions that we have, with the amount of interest that both our ambassadors gave and the amount of knowledge that you gave back to us. I think we have a lot to learn. Thankfully, we're young enough to learn, and we have to utilize all these resources. I see a lot of LinkedIn engagement on the chat. I'm sure at the end of the day, we will have close to about 50 people in our networks personally from our ends. So I think there's a quite a lot.
If you don't know how to save a chat, save the chat. If you look in the chat box, the 3 dots there, it'll be save chat, because there's going to be people that you need to connect to that you haven't been able to get to while we've been talking. So save the chat and you connect to everybody.
Save chat. I didn't know. Thank you.
Yes, I think I also didn't know. So thank you very much. We're learning a lot of things.
Yeah, I don't type fast at all, and I don't think very fast. So I always have to save the chat so that we have it. If you want to know where the chat is, if you click on it, it'll be somewhere in your, when you hit save chat, there'll be a little window that pops up that says chat saved, show in Finder or show in folder, and that's where the chat lives. So that's where it is.
Great, thank you for that last tidbit of advice as well. I think everyone will be doing that from now on. So yes, as closing remarks, I cannot tell how much we at G17 appreciate all the advice that you have given us. And yes, we do look forward to meeting you at your event next week. And definitely, I think our global team will share it with all the 15 countries here today. Unfortunately, Philippines could not join us because there's a hurricane at the moment. So it was a little bit tough for them to join, so they won't be here. But of course, I'm sure the global team will find them a solution as well. But yes, on behalf of G17, the global team, as well as the University Ambassadors Consortium, I want to give my heartfelt thanks to Gail and Mark, and really look forward to seeing what we can do in the future in terms of SDGs. We've got very short time, 8 years, to make sure that the 2030 agenda is fulfilled. But I think the appreciation is pouring in from the chat. I think a lot of people will now be exhilarated with passion to continue on the work that they have started with G17 and move on to not only make this organization better, but also to join in globally. And we hope to work with Connected very soon as well, and join in from all over the world and continue this journey that we have started. So thank you very much, Ms. Mowgli and Mr. Nabong, for coming and sharing your expertise. I cannot tell you how much that we appreciate it from G17. And I would like to also thank Connected for providing us with the Zoom platform and your continued support. And also to our ambassadors, executives, coordinators, and advisors. It was amazing to have all of you here, and we are so glad that all of you could make it in these very tough times. I know, especially in the global south, we are all facing problems, from India to Sri Lanka to Brazil, but you're all here. You are all trying to be change makers, and we fully appreciate it and support you in your future journeys. And hopefully we'll come back to Digital University again to learn from these experts in the field. And like Mark said, in the future, we will be helping each other out, depending on where we are. And thank you very much for joining. Have a good night.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.